Hello again, football fans, and welcome back. Welcome back to Miners Live. I know that it has been a while, and for that, I apologize. The doldrums of the RFL season, if you will. Um, I can't say anything other than I'm sorry to each and every one of you. I know that it was a while. I know that there was about a month to a month and a half period off. And I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be here with you guys. Excited to get your thoughts, your opinions, your feedback on how you feel the season has gone, what your excitement level is for the postseason, as we have just 3 games left in the regular season. So we'll get into a little bit of now that we are just 3 weeks away from the playoffs. Who are some teams that have maybe disappointed a little bit or a lot of it, right? There's a couple teams out there, you probably know who you are, who feel like you've been a bit of a disappointment this year. Acceptance is key, right? Acceptance is key. The idea of being a disappointment and not being able to look yourself in the mirror and recognize that you were in fact a disappointment is a problem. Recognizing that your team was a disappointment and being able to accept it and figure out why and take some ownership, that is critical, right? And from a GM standpoint, it's vital. If you can't do that, there's cause for concern. There's potential problems in the future, maybe in the locker room, maybe on the sideline, maybe playing time, whatever it might be. You have to be able to accept that. And within minutes of kind of throwing out there for the community, for the audience of, hey, what are your thoughts on who some of these disappointing teams are? I see people already not being able to recognize it. You have to be able to recognize that your team underperformed. So we'll get into some teams that have underperformed, whether you want to call it a disappointment, underperforming, whatever it might be. We'll get into who we feel some of those teams are, who I feel some of those teams are, and get some thoughts and opinions from you guys. We'll go over that. We'll also give you a tale of 2 seasons, right? So obviously during an 18-week season, there's a lot that can go on, right? Typically, you like to break the season down into quarters, right? So typically you're looking at like the first, 4 games of the year. And then you kind of look at weeks 1 through 4 and you're like, okay, this is going to give me a little bit of an idea. And then you look at the middle 10 weeks. So like split those up into 2 groups of 5 if you want. And then you look at the last 4 weeks. And that's kind of if you were to group the RFL season, those are kind of the groups that you're looking at, and you're trying to obviously win those groups, right? Like if you can win in those groups, then you put yourself in a decent position to win come the end of the season. So I'll give you my thoughts on a few teams that just absolutely drastically prove that it really is a tale of 2 seasons this year in the RFL. And we'll get into some of the ARC and NRC playoff scenarios, some teams that have the opportunity this week to clinch a playoff spot or possibly clinch the division. So Plenty to get into with all of that. I'll take you right up until 7 p.m. Eastern time when we get into the RFL doubleheader tonight. The Sacramento Miners, we will be in action tonight. We will have the late game. So as soon as I get out of here, I will be getting prepped and ready for our late game tonight. So, it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long night. But again, good to be back with you guys. I'm going to take a quick peek out to the chat. I know it's been a long time. And why am I not surprised? But even after a month and a half off, the very first person in the chat, Rohan, good to see you, buddy. Glad we didn't lose you. I see Hodge, Colo. There's Forbes. Good to see you, buddy. Good stuff with all the playoff breakdowns and all of those scenarios. I know that was, I think for probably the last month, that was probably keeping everybody alive in the community. So shout out to you for that. Ronnie Shanahan, don't go anywhere. Actually, you know what? You might want to go somewhere. You could probably take the next 45 minutes off and be okay with it. Killian Bain, what's up, buddy? Hope you have a monster game tonight. EA, I see Hodge. David Leathers, there's a name I don't see all that often. Good to see you, buddy. So, all right, I've only got you here for about 50 more minutes, and we're going to end up talking a lot of the playoff stuff on the back end. So I don't want to waste too much time. If you guys have any questions or anything, I will try to keep an eye on the chat and get you guys in if at all possible. Hodge, you can take us to 9 p.m. I'm not going to take you to 9 p.m. I still have to prep. I still have a little bit of prep that I need to do before my game. So I'm going to be out of here with you guys at 7. And then during that first game from 7 to 8, I will be doing my prep stuff. So I will not be taking you guys all the way to 9. But I appreciate the sentiment there. So yeah, our Miners game tonight, we are at home against the Celtic Tigers. The earlier game, the Houston Voyagers will host the DC Marshals. So I'm sorry, I'm chuckling a little inside here because Ronnie Shanahan is prepared. He's prepared for whatever it is that I told him he should probably leave the room for, which I appreciate. You know what? I appreciate the fact that I give you fair warning that you might want to leave the room. And if you want to stick it out, good for you. Just know that if you do leave to go talk to your mom or dad in the next half an hour, I won't be offended. I think they're probably the only ones that might be able to console you at the end of this hour. So I'm just kidding. It's not really that bad. All right. So lots to get into. The disappointments, right? So at the beginning of the year, I said this year was going to be dramatically different than what we've seen in RFL seasons prior. I even threw out specific teams that I felt were going to underperform. And I even threw out teams that I felt were getting a little bit disrespected, right? Like if you remember, you can rewind and go back to, week 2, week 3, somewhere in that time period, maybe even week 1. And I said, do not be surprised if we get to week 14 or week 15 and all of a sudden you start seeing teams that are perennial powerhouses in the RFL and you realize, wow, this team's not going to make the playoffs. And I said that, and we're watching it unfold. And it's this year more than I think any other year. We are seeing that. We are seeing teams that are perennial powerhouses in the RFL. Teams that we are accustomed to watch win their division, make deep runs into the postseason, and possibly even make it to the Real Bowl. We are seeing some of those teams underperform. And I don't mean underperform like they've won the division, 3 of the last 4 years, and this year they're not winning the division. I mean, they win the division almost every year and are always considered a contender for the Real Bowl, and they're not going to make the playoffs. And that's rare in the RFL to be able to say that when we still have 3 games left. But I'm telling you right now, there were 2 teams that I mentioned at the beginning of the year. There was about 5 teams that I mentioned at the beginning of the year that I thought were teams that, in the eyes of the community, most people, I don't want to say everybody, but most people felt were automatic playoff teams. Like, pencil it in. You don't have to think about it. This team is going to be in the postseason. They're likely to win their division, and there's a good chance they make a run at a Real Bowl title. I said the Explorers were one of them. I said the Cougars. The Cougars are a different story, so I'm going to leave them out. I said the Explorers were one. I said the Thunderbirds were one. And I said the Steamers were one. Those were 3 of the big ones. And I said, do not be surprised if we get to week 13 or week 14 and you look down at the standings and you realize, wow, the Thunderbirds aren't going to make the playoffs. Well, guess what, guys? The Thunderbirds aren't going to make the playoffs. And that same logic held true with the Steamers. You look down and you say, I wasn't going to be surprised if I looked down at week 14 or 15 and all of a sudden, wow, the Steamers, they're not going to make the playoffs. Guess what, guys? The Steamers aren't going to make the playoffs. They're not. Now, you can DM Forbes and you can have him throw numbers into his calculator, and you can sit there and you can watch the wheels spin for an hour and a half. And then after it's all done loading, those calculations are thrown out at you. And yes, you can see that there is a greater than 0.000% chance that the Steamers will make the playoffs. What I'm telling you right now is that they're not. Period. And so when yesterday I throw out, I give the opportunity for the community, because it's one thing for me to sit here and say, eyeball a few teams that I think might have a hard time. I even said the Miners, right? At the beginning of the year, I said, look, don't be surprised if, Miners going to a new division. Don't be surprised if we find ourselves on the outside looking in, right? But we're not, the Miners are not right now and have not been historically at the level of teams like the Thunderbirds and the Steamers. Right? Like, that's the goal, is to get to that point. But if I told you that at the beginning of the RFL season, you had to pick 5 teams, or maybe even 4 teams. You had to pick 4 teams that were going to make the playoffs, and you had to get it right. You have to name 4 teams, and all 4 have to be right. Year over year, the Thunderbirds and the Steamers are probably 2 of those 4 teams that you guys are going to say. Oh, I did not realize this. So looks like I must have missed this. The Marshals and the Voyagers game has been moved until tomorrow. Okay, so that makes more sense on why Hodge was saying take it all the way to 9. So thanks for that. I must have missed that. I did not see that announcement. So we're at that point. We're entering week 16. We're in week 16. And I'm here to tell you while maybe not mathematically eliminated, the Steamers are not going to make the postseason. And the Thunderbirds are not going to make the postseason. And in 2 weeks, we're going to realize there's about 4 or 5 other teams that, aren't going to make the postseason, that are teams that historically you would find in the postseason. Right. And we might be one of those teams. The Sacramento Miners might be one of those teams. Right. Like, we have won the division 3 years in a row, albeit the ARC South. We moved to the ARC West this year. So this is our first year in the ARC West. We still have a chance to make the playoffs. Every game from here on out is critical. I don't want to say every game is a must win, but it kind of is a must win. I think we could still get in if we won 2 of our last 3, but if we win all 3 of our remaining games, I think we're guaranteed in at that point. Again, the calculations and all the work that Forbes has put in behind the scenes with the schedule and the standings and calculating all that out, and doing all that research is great. And it's a huge help. So again, shout out to Forbes for all of that. But I don't care what his calculations say. The Memphis Steamers aren't going to make the playoffs. And so yesterday, when I poll the community, because I want your input, right? Like, I want to know what you guys think about who some of these disappointing teams are. And so I put the poll out there last night. Basically, in the ARC and in the NRC, what team has been the biggest disappointment so far this year? And I put 4 teams from the ARC and 4 teams from the NRC, right? On the ARC side of things, what team has been the biggest disappointment? Is it the Chicago Cougars? They went half the season before they got a win. And if I'm being honest, the first win that they got was handed to them because the coaching staff of the Austin Armadillos made the absolute dumbest move that I've ever seen a coach or general manager make in my entire RFL career. Like, the biggest, I have no idea what you're doing moment that I've ever seen in my RFL career happened when the Austin Armadillos played the Chicago Cougars. Because in my opinion, the Chicago Cougars didn't even win that game. The Armadillos absolutely lost it. They absolutely lost that game and gave it away. And it was a mind-blowingly stupid decision on the part of the Armadillos to game plan the way that they did and change their playbook going against a team that I think myself and 10 of you guys in the chat could probably beat the Chicago Cougars. Why you would change your playbook? No idea. Why you have the best offense in the league heading into week 8 or week 9, whatever it is, and you change your playbook? Let's not get cute here. Like, are you changing your playbook? Why? Because you think you can beat the Cougars with any playbook? I get it. But come on. Right? So in my opinion, there are 2, I have no idea what you're doing moments so far in the RFL. And one of them was the Austin Armadillos switching their offense and completely changing their game plan going into a matchup against the Chicago Cougars team who hadn't won a game all year. And then it turned around and bit them in the ass and they lost. And the first win that the Cougars got this year was from a team that many of us look at as the best team in the RFL. Right? Like, there's a lot of people out there that would say the Austin Armadillos are the best team in the RFL right now. Then what happened 2 months ago? Right? Like, so there's that. And I'll get into a little bit later the other. So there's 2 big bonehead I don't know what you're doing. I could have seen this. If you had told me that you were going to do this, I could have predicted this. And in the case of the next bonehead move, I did predict it. Sometimes I think people overthink things a little bit. I have at times been guilty of overthinking things. And so, fortunately, I've probably seen witness to the results and the impact that overthinking might have on other GMs. And so it has prevented me from doing it, right? Like if I saw other coaches and other GMs overthinking things to a level where they were constantly tweaking and it was working, then I might be like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not overthinking it. Maybe I'm thinking just the right way and I just need to tweak it a little bit because it's clearly working for whoever it might be. But by and large, when you start doing that, more often than not, it's not working. And fortunately for me, if I'm able to see that and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that chance. Right? Like I don't want to be that. Right? Like there was times early on in the year where the Sacramento Miners were underperforming and I thought about blowing everything up. So I put the poll out there because I wanted you guys to have some input on what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the season, right? Like at the beginning of the year, I threw out some teams that I thought might not make the playoffs. Here we are. Some of those teams, it's come to fruition. They're not going to make the playoffs. I even threw out my own team as a team that might not make the playoffs. And here we are. We've got 3 games left. And if we lose all 3, we're not going to make it. If we win 1 and lose 2, we're probably not going to make it. So in the ARC, I threw out 4 teams: the Chicago Cougars, the London Bulldogs, the Cincinnati Hogs, and the Houston Voyagers. And then I even put in an option for other. So the question was posed, what ARC team has been the biggest disappointment so far this year? The Chicago Cougars, the London Bulldogs, the Cincinnati Hogs, the Houston Voyagers, or maybe it's other. Maybe you feel like it's not one of those 4 teams and it's some other team. Great. You can pick other. So 45% of you said that the Houston Voyagers were the biggest disappointment so far in the ARC, which I felt was interesting because the London Bulldogs, in my opinion, are not that different than the Houston Voyagers right now this season. Yes, the records are not identical. I get it. The Bulldogs have a better record. But when you look at what the Bulldogs did last year and look at what the Bulldogs brought back, I don't think that very many people were looking at the London Bulldogs as being 8-6, I believe they are. I believe that's right. Let me just double check here. I'll just get off my screen. Yeah. So the Bulldogs right now are 8-6. The Voyagers are 7-7. Why do 45% of you think that the Voyagers are a bigger disappointment than the London Bulldogs? That's to me where I have questions. Because the Bulldogs are not supposed to lose 6 games in a year. And you can make the argument that the Voyagers aren't supposed to be 500. I get it. But the Voyagers also benched Glenn Hay and have gone, I think, 12 of their 14 games or 11 at least 10 or 11 of their 14 games this year have been with Glenn Hay on the bench. They turned things over to Monte Wyatt. And while I guess I'm not going to say that gives them a pass into the you're not a disappointment category, I still feel like they are a little bit of a disappointment, yes. But I just don't think that the gap between the level of disappointment in Houston should be 35%. In my opinion, I'm trying to think of who I voted. I think I voted for the Bulldogs. I think I was one of the 9% that voted for the Bulldogs. For all these reasons that I laid out. We're talking about a team that won the Relo Bowl last year. I mean, if I were to tell you that the Relo Bowl champion were going to miss the playoffs the following year, would you agree that they're probably the biggest disappointment in the league? Colo Ransom. The Bulldogs are underperforming, yeah, but it's still a team you don't want to match up with. I agree with you 100%. But that doesn't mean that they're not the biggest. If they're not the biggest disappointment in the league, I'm shocked that 45% of you think that the Voyagers are. I don't know how you can say the Voyagers are the biggest disappointment in the ARC and not have completely forgotten about who the London Bulldogs are. Yes. Are they a nightmare to face in the postseason? Yeah, nobody wants to face them in the postseason. But guess what? They're probably not going to make it. Like, they're fighting to get in. The Voyagers switched divisions. They're now in a division that has the Armadillos and the Dreadnoughts. You could make an argument that that division is the toughest division. I think it's easily the toughest division in the ARC. And you could probably make an argument that it's one of the toughest divisions in the entire league. And you want to say that the Voyagers being 7-7 is the biggest disappointment? I just don't buy it. Like, I can't look at the Bulldogs and think that they're not a bigger disappointment. And yes, Smitty brings up strength of schedule. That's fine. But as the season goes on and those teams start to lose, that strength of their schedule isn't the same because those teams are losing. Like, it blows my mind. And then take it a step further. One team that I did include on here, listen, I said at the beginning of the year, don't be surprised if the Sacramento Miners don't make the playoffs. This is going to be that year where dogs and cats are living together. It's mass hysteria, right? This is going to be one of those wild and out, funky, fresh years where we just don't know. Every single time we turn around, something weird's going to happen. And I think you would all agree at some point you've turned around and been like, what the heck just happened? What did I just see? We've had that happen throughout the season. And so I said all that at the beginning of the year. And I even said, don't be surprised if the Miners struggle to make the playoffs. I didn't include the Miners as a team that is the biggest disappointment because I'm mind blown to think that there's somebody out there that thinks that we are the biggest disappointment. I guess I would be flattered. I wouldn't even be offended. I would be flattered if you were going to vote for the Sacramento Miners to be the biggest disappointment this year when we are 8-6 with 3 games left. Like, there's a decent chance that we finish the year 10-7. and you're going to say that is the biggest disappointment in the league, I am sorry. I must have forgot that you thought we were going to go undefeated. Right? So when I'm just going to do it because I have no shame and I don't care. And if you're going to attach your name to it, well, then I'm going to call you out on it. But look, when a certain quarterback for a certain Baltimore Gunners team says, "Oh, the Miners are the biggest disappointment," it makes me feel like you don't pay attention. It makes me feel like maybe is not only your on-field awareness really poor, but maybe your overall league awareness is also really poor. Like, nobody should think that the Sacramento Miners are the biggest disappointment this year. You may have been disappointed with the way the season started, but the fact that we've won 6 of our last 7 games and the fact that we're 2 games above 500, if you think the Miners are the biggest disappointment, then clearly you were expecting the Miners to win 14 games this year. You were expecting the Miners to win 13 or 14 games at minimum in order for you to think that that's the biggest disappointment. Like, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. I never even contemplated putting our team in there. But clearly I should have, because maybe we would have garnered at least 1% of the vote. And then the other team that's in here, 22.7% of you said other. So I guess let's do that. For those of you that are in the chat right now that did participate in this poll, what ARC team has been the biggest disappointment so far this year? 22% of you, basically 23% of you, said other. So not the Cougars, not the Bulldogs, not the Hogs, and not the Voyagers. I'm going to throw this out to you guys right now, and maybe anyone else who maybe you didn't take the poll, but you want to participate right now. What team do you feel has been the biggest disappointment in the ARC? If it's other and it's not the Cougars, Bulldogs, Hogs, or Voyagers, because I'm curious, and there's no right or wrong here. I'm just genuinely curious what other people think and why you think certain teams are a disappointment. Because clearly I don't agree with a lot of the thought processes that some of you have, because again, just like I mentioned a while ago, I would never say that the Voyagers were more of a disappointment than the Bulldogs. I wouldn't say that, but clearly I'm outnumbered, and the 45% of you said they are the biggest disappointment in the league, and only 9% of you said the Bulldogs were. So obviously I'm looking and I'm thinking a different way than some of you are. So I'm genuinely curious. Do we have anyone in here who is throwing out a different team other than one of those 4? Take a quick peek at the chat, see what we got. Let's see. No one. None of you guys had any team other than the Cougars, Bulldogs, Hogs, or Voyagers. So, guys, I understand the tougher teams, the strength of schedule. I get it. The point is, if I don't care what your schedule is, you could play the top 2 teams in every division from the year before. If you won the Relo Bowl the year before and you don't make the playoffs, or you are kicking and clawing to just have an opportunity to get in my opinion, that is a bigger disappointment than a team who went to a backup quarterback. Like, I don't know why we're saying that the Voyagers are such a disappointment when they switched their quarterback. If any team in the league were to switch their quarterback, I could make an argument that they would be worse than 7-7. I mean, the Bulldogs are 8-6 with their starting quarterback. The Miners are 8-6 with their starting quarterback. And I know you can say, well, Monte Wyatt is the starting quarterback. Okay, fine. But let's all agree he's not the highest overall. And I get overalls don't always make the team. They don't always make the player. I understand all that. But for Glenn Hay, too, I want to say Glenn Hay, Smitty, maybe you know this. I want to say Glenn Hay won ARC Offensive Player of the Year last year, or maybe he even won ARC MVP. If not, he was very close. Like, we're talking about a player that was looked at as arguably the best quarterback in the league last year. So if you're saying they're a big disappointment and you're including the decision to bench the quarterback in your thought process, okay, I get it. If you're building in your opinion of their level of disappointment, if you're building in your opinion of Coach Baker's decision to bench Glenn Hay, then okay. But I'm not doing that. And so if you are, I can understand why you think the Voyagers are a bigger disappointment, because a lot of your disappointment is in the fact that they benched the quarterback. I'm not basing my level of disappointment on the fact that they benched the quarterback. I'm looking at just the fact that they're playing without him. And granted, I get you could make the argument that they're playing better without him than they were with him. I'm not gonna argue all that. We don't know what we don't know. I just thought it was interesting. And again, why I'm genuinely curious a lot of times to see what other people think and how other people evaluate these teams and where they are. Let's see. What else we got here? You could throw so here's a decent one. CP says you could throw the Bisons in the discussion, but why? Right? Like if you're going to say, for the same logic I just said a minute ago, if you're going to say that the Miners were the biggest disappointment, I would call you an idiot, because we've won 8 games. In order for you to think that we're the biggest disappointment, having won 8 games already, you'd have to think that we were going to win 14 or 15. So the same holds with the Bisons. I'm not going to say that they're the biggest disappointment, because in order for me to say that the Bisons are a disappointment, I would have to actually admit that I thought they were going to be good in the first place. And I don't know if there's any one of you in the chat right now that is going to raise your hand and agree to that statement. Right? Like I think everybody, if you were to look at the ARC West and you were to predict how the ARC West was going to play out, as a matter of fact, we have it at the beginning of the year. Oh, that's the South. I'm sorry. The ARC West. The Oklahoma City Bisons were projected to go 6-11. Oddly enough, how'd that St. Louis Aviators projection turn out? The Oklahoma City Bisons were projected to win 6 games. They're not going to win 6 games. Maybe they win 3, 4. I just don't feel like that. I didn't have very high expectations for the Oklahoma City Bisons, and so it's hard for me to call a team a disappointment when I just don't really have any expectations for them to begin with, right? Let's see. Yeah, guys, this was my point. I don't understand why I feel like you're bringing up the point that I made all year long as a way to disagree with my point about disappointments. I said at the beginning of the year, yes, the schedule this season is way different. It's unlike any season we've ever had. It is not up for debate. It's not up for discussion. It is 100% the most difficult, challenging schedule and season that anyone has ever had. Whether that is me in my 4 years in the league, whether that is Smitty running all the teams that he runs in the 9 years of the league, whether that is Rob, whether that is Bill, whoever it is, for however many years they've been here, none of them can argue that this isn't the hardest and most difficult season ever. You can't make that argument. It's physically impossible. And that's why at the beginning of the year, I said, we're going to see some wild-ish. We're going to see teams that maybe we've never seen make the playoffs before. We're going to see teams that historically are powerhouse contenders that might not quite be there because the automatic wins are now gone. There are 5 games on every team's schedule now that were not there ever. And rather than getting 5 automatic wins to your record, maybe you've got 4 losses. Right? Instead of those 5 automatic wins, now you're playing real RFL teams. Maybe you go 1-4 in those games. Maybe you go 2-3. This is without question the hardest season that we've ever had. But it's that way for everybody. And I understand that as the team that won the Relo Bowl, they get the number 1 strength of schedule. We're not talking like the Voyagers were a bum team and they got a crap schedule. Now, it may have tweaked a little because they switched divisions, but all right, so let's look at the NRC, right? So on the NRC side of things, this is where things get a little bit, for me, I think obvious. And again, this is where clearly my train of thought and my thought process doesn't align with some of you guys, right? Again, I thought for sure the Bulldogs, in my opinion, were the biggest disappointment so far. The majority of you said the Voyagers. So on the NRC side of things, what NRC team has been the biggest disappointment this year? Is it the Tampa Bay Tigers? Is it the Memphis Steamers? Is it the Atlanta Thunderbirds? Or is it the New York Barons? For me, I thought this was a no-brainer. And I will say, I'm glad to see that there's only 2 teams that even got a vote. So of the 4 teams, and there's the option for other, there were only 2 selections that were made. And I'm glad to see, because a minute ago I told you, I feel like this question was kind of obvious. And I don't want to say self-explanatory. Obviously, the question is self-explanatory. But I really did feel like there was an obvious choice here. And I guess I'm glad to see that there were only 2 teams that were picked. So 63% of you said that the biggest disappointing team in the NRC this year was the Atlanta Thunderbirds. And 37% of you said it was the Memphis Steamers. Now, I will just tell you, in the interest of full transparency, because I'm nothing if not open and transparent with you guys, I picked the Steamers. I feel like knowing who the Steamers are and what they are year in and year out and what we've come to expect from them, and without the glaring loss of anything drastic on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, I felt confident that they were not going to be where they are right now. And then when you turn around and you make the trade that you make during the season, you make that trade to bolster your team. I just feel like, for me, the Steamers are the bigger disappointment. When I look at the division, the Thunderbirds right now are 6-9 or 6-8. So are the Steamers. They're both 6-8. They're both not going to make the postseason. And when I look at the divisions, NRC, when I look at the Thunderbirds and I look at their division, for me, the Dallas Desperados and the Mexico City Diablos are probably two of the best three, if not the best two teams in the NRC right now. And they're in the same division as the Thunderbirds. So it's hard for me to say that the Atlanta Thunderbirds are a bigger disappointment, because when I look at the NRC East, for as great as I might feel about the Desperados and Diablos, I don't feel that way about the Shamrocks, the Monarchs, or the Marshalls. I don't. And so for me, the Steamers are the bigger disappointment. Is this real life? Oh, God. Round 9. Round 9. Can we round 9 this? This is a round 9 draft pick. Oh. Cheers to you, Jack Sky. I just look at the Steamers and I think they're a bigger disappointment. Clearly, 63% of you said the Thunderbirds. That's fine. I think more than anything, the fact that only 2 teams were selected makes me feel better about this. Right? If somebody had put the Barons or someone had put the Tigers, I would have questioned it, just like I did earlier. Now, that said, you want to talk about where Dunner was right and where Dunner was wrong. I give you guys the opportunity whenever I say things, if you want to pull receipts and you want to hold me to task, right? We can do a where Dunner was right and where Dunner was wrong. Where Dunner was wrong, I thought the Tampa Bay Tigers were going to make the playoffs this year. I thought that they were going to build on the success of last year. I thought that they were the best team in the RFL to not make the playoffs last year. And I thought that they were going to be able to continue that trajectory. Clearly, I was wrong. Where Dunner was right? Well, I told you guys, don't be surprised if the Thunderbirds and the Steamers don't make the playoffs this year, because we're looking at the hardest schedule, the hardest season that we've ever had. And now here we are. Come on, dude. Come on. I'll tell you what, if you want to, I challenge you. You want a graphic boy? Put together a where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong graphic for me. And you can put J's on there. You can put whatever you want. what else we got in here? Take a quick peek back out. Boy, you guys are really hitting hard on those kicks, huh? All right. Oh, who's this? Oh, come on here. Get out of here with this. Like, listen, okay, so if I'm gonna take him to task because this is a stupid comment, I will also, you know what? I'm gonna hold off. Hodge, because I have a whole segment about this, and so I don't want to give it away right now. So, I mentioned at the top of the show, Ronnie Shanahan. If you're still here, I appreciate you sticking through. We are going to go a little bit over 7, probably not too much more over, but I will go over, knowing that there is no early game. But Ronnie Shanahan, you can feel free to bow out right now if you want to. That's completely fine. I would also say Commissioner Smitty, you could probably bow out right now too if you want to. This next section may or may not be your favorite. So, A Tale of Two Cities, right? Like I talked about it at the beginning of the show. Every season you break the season up into quarters, you break them up into quadrants, trimesters, halves, whatever you want to do, right? And the idea is to win that half, win that quarter, whatever it is. And at the end of the year, if you win the majority of those, you're going to be in a position to make the playoffs. And that's the goal, right? To make the playoffs. The goal isn't to win the division. The goal is to make the playoffs. The stretch goal is to win the division. And then the ultimate reach is to win the Real Bowl, right? But you start off like your first goal is to make the playoffs. So A Tale of Two Cities. Basically what I did here was I looked back at, if you were to take the RFL season and you were to break it up into 2 separate seasons, what that might look like. And so while I don't agree with Hodge at all that the Marshals are going to win the division, I will say that it has 100% been a tale of 2 seasons for the DC Marshals. When you look at the start of the season for this club in DC, they started the year 0-8. Like, there's not many people not named Rob Roby who even know what that feels like. Right? To start the year 0-8 and then win 6 games in a row is impressive. Now, it also goes to show you the value of having a general manager. Every team has a general manager, a full-time dedicated user general manager, right? This isn't taking anything away from Smitty. It's not easy. I would, if I had to run 15, 16 teams in this league, none of them would be good because I would be, thinking too hard on all of them, trying to figure it out. So it goes to show the benefit of having that general manager, having that owner, because at the beginning of the year, they didn't have that. They didn't have it at all. And then they bring on Hodge, and then they win. And if memory serves, Hodge, you can tell me, or Smitty, you can tell me. I believe when Hodge took over, they were 0-7. I think they lost one more game. And then after that, that was it. Hodge won every game after that. Right? So it's virtually impossible for one person, let's call him Smitty, to be the owner and general manager of 15 or 16 teams and put all of them in a position to be great. Right? It's hard to do. And so this isn't a knock on Smitty and how he ran the Marshals at all. It's just a testament to what a really good, dedicated, committed member of the community who knows the league well enough and knows the game well enough can do when they really sit down and focus, right? And that's what we want in this league. Okay, so Smitty said the Marshals were 0-6 when Hodge took over. So Hodge lost his first 2 games as general manager and then won 6 in a row. And it just goes to show you, this is what we all want. This is what Smitty wants. I'm just speaking for him because I know, I don't have to ask him. I know this is what he wants. And it's what every other general manager, user general manager in the league wants. We want committed guys that know what they're doing, that, you know, are going to be in it. And so shout out to Hodge because, you know, at the beginning of the year, many of you were probably criticizing him for things that had nothing to do with the DC Marshals. And now here we are. And they, I believe, still have an outside chance to make the playoffs. While crazy as it might sound, after starting the year 0-8, they won 6 in a row after that. And so now they got a chance. So congratulations, Hodge. I know it's been a tumultuous season. It's been a bit of an up and down season for you. You know, but it is to be commended, what you've done in turning that team around that quickly. So definitely a tale of 2 seasons in the District of Columbia. You know, and I guess I would be remiss if I didn't. It's also been a tale of 2 seasons here in Sacramento, right? Like, we started the year 2-5, and like I said earlier, I was scratching my head. We were frustrated in the locker room, couldn't figure out what was going to work. There were changes made early on that kind of affected what we were planning on doing as a team. And we just weren't able to figure it out on the fly. Unfortunately, we were, you know, you're kind of tasked with figuring it out on the fly when changes are made like that. And we just couldn't do it. You know, the first week of the season, we had a chance to beat the London Bulldogs. Miles McCain got hurt in the first quarter of that game. We were trailing. He came back late in the game, led the team down the field, tied the game, went to overtime, lost in overtime. Right? Like, there were some games where we had a chance, but ultimately starting the year 2-5 is garbage. It's absolutely garbage. And if you look back at what happened around that time when we were 2-5, Buck Ulbrich got traded. Griffin Goodman got traded. Like, I parted ways with high-end offensive players because at 2-5, things aren't looking good. And I'm thinking about the future. I'm not necessarily thinking about how the hell are we going to get this team to the playoffs at 2-5. I'm certainly not banking on that. And so, you know what? Love you, Buck Ulbrich. Thank you for everything that you've done. But if I can get some assets that are going to help me in the future, and I was able to do that in a first-round draft pick, all right, I'm going to do it. right? Like you have to be able to, I say this all the time. You have to be able to make difficult decisions in the RFL. You have to be able to make a decision. And I know you guys are going to, you know exactly what I'm about to say because I've said it a bunch. You have to be able to make a decision in this league where it could make you look like a genius or it could make you look like an idiot. And you have to be willing to make those decisions, because if you're not willing to make those decisions, you're just going to be, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be mired in mediocrity. And if you make the decision and you look like an idiot, hopefully you traded away a player and you got some draft capital and you can rebuild through the draft. But if you make a decision and you look like a rock star, sky's the limit. Right? And so that's what those decisions were. Trading Buck Ulbrich, that is a decision that was going to either, it's one day going to make me look like a rock star or it's going to make me look like an idiot. And as of right now, I guess the jury's still out, but I think next year, you're all going to realize that trade makes me look like a rock star. Because not only did I make that trade and the team has played better since, but it gave Ajon Grant, until he got hurt, more playing time to develop. But also the biggest return in that trade was a first-round draft pick. So what does that first-round draft pick next year look like? I don't know. But the idea that I now have 2 first-round draft picks next year, that's going to help. And while, yes, if I had kept Buck and maybe things had stayed the way they were and we trended 2-5 and we ended the year with 5 or 6 wins, we probably would have had a top 3 or a top 5 draft pick. Now we're not going to have that. Now, for the 4th year in a row, I'm going to end up picking right in the middle, towards the middle to high teens, early 20s. That's kind of where I've picked in the draft every year. That's where my slot has been every year. Typically, I'm able to finagle and maybe move up like 3 or 4 spots, but usually I find myself in that range of 15 to 22 or 23. And then if I'm at 22, maybe I can trade up to get like 15 or 16 or something. Right now, I've never been fortunate enough to have a draft pick in the top 10, which is a good thing. That means you're winning and you're picking towards the back end of the draft. But when you're winning and then bowing out in the first round of the playoffs every year, it's frustrating, right? So, I think that trading Buck could have made me look like an idiot. However, I feel in the end, it's ultimately going to work out. And so as a general manager, you have to be able to make those decisions. And you have to understand it. And you can't play Monday morning quarterback. You can't just immediately say the following week when the Miners lose by 30, oh my God, Dunn looks like an idiot. I can't believe he traded Buck and Griffin. Look at what happened. He traded Buck and he lost by 30. Well, then look what happened. He won 6 of his next 7. So now you look like an idiot, right? Like you can't be that Monday morning quarterback. Yeah, Colo Ransom brings up a point. So again, along the lines of you have to be willing to make a deal or make a decision that you could look like a genius or look like an idiot. Darnell Hodge comes over and takes over for the Marshalls, right? And he comes over right before the trade deadline, throws a bunch of player on the trade block, deals away Dylan Schwartz, who's his second best linebacker, one of the best players on his entire defense. Why? Well, because his team was 0-7. And because he looked in the mirror and he said, wow, we're 0-7. I'd like to try to get some draft capital to try to rebuild this team because we're 0-7. Ships them off to the Dreadnoughts, get some draft capital in return. And I agree with Colo here. It ultimately, I believe, will look like a win-win. And from a general manager's perspective, that's what you want. I don't really care what the impact is on Baker and the Voyagers, as long as I feel like I win. I don't need him to lose. I don't need him to look like an idiot. The goal is not for me to unequivocally look like a rock star and him to look like an absolute jackass. Like that's not the goal. All I care about is that the trade that we made benefited us and it looks like a win for the Sacramento Miners. If it's also a win for the Houston Voyagers, great. I don't really care. If it's also a win for the Houston Voyagers, if anything, that's good because it creates that bond and that level of trust and relationship between general managers, right? Like if I make a trade with Baker, and within weeks you realize I crushed him in the trade and I won the trade and everybody knows I won the trade, well, then maybe Baker's going to be a little bit reluctant to want to make moves and deal with me in the future because he's worried about something. Because the last time I made a deal with Dunn, I looked like an idiot. And I don't really want to do that again. So you know what? Maybe I'm not going to negotiate this deal with Dunn. Maybe I'm going to go talk to Frankie. Maybe I'm going to go talk to Rob or Bill, or maybe I'll hit up Smitty for one of the generic teams. Like that's a real thing. I would be that way. I know that if I was making trades and I felt like I was constantly being made a fool, I'd be like, man, what the hell am I doing? Why did I think that person was that good? Or what did I hear? Why did I make that decision? Or what did they see that I didn't see? Right? Because in the moment you think everything's good. But what did they see that I clearly didn't see? Because now this looks like a bad deal. And whether that is 6 weeks later, whether that's 8 weeks later, whether that's 2 years later, sometimes you don't know. All right. And then there's one more team that I wanted to get into as it pertains to a tale of two seasons. And so earmuffs, if you got them, but by God, if anybody was going to get fired this year, it should be the general manager of the Cincinnati Hogs. If there was ever an opportunity for Smitty to fire himself, this would be it. Because this was foreseen, right? Like, I don't want to say I'm like Dunstradamus here, but I 100% called this 2.5 months ago when the Hogs were, I think, 4-0, and there was like 4 or 5 teams that were 4-0. And we were talking about what teams you thought had the best chance of keeping the undefeated season going. I said the Hogs cannot sustain this. There is no way that this is sustainable. They have a terrible offense that is masked by the fact that Dre Shivers at the time was, I believe, 3rd or 4th in the league in rushing, and coupled with the fact that they had amazing performances from their defense. But There was no way that an inexperienced, unproven rookie quarterback was going to be able to sustain that level of success. And when they were 4-0, I said, this isn't sustainable. Watch out for the cliff. And when we got to the trade deadline, I said it again. I said, the Cincinnati Hogs, if they don't pick up the phone and call the Houston Voyagers and figure out what they want for Glenn Hay, they're doing themselves a disservice. I don't care if they're 6-0 right now and we're getting to the trade deadline. Inevitably, they're going to lose a couple games. And once they lose a couple games, what happens there? And even if they do make the postseason and they stumble in, do you really trust Ronnie Shanahan, a rookie, to do much of anything? They probably could have gone out. I don't know. I said all this in the episodes leading up to the trade deadline, and I just kind of let it go. I have no knowledge of anything that may have happened. I have no idea what Baker may have wanted for Glenn Hay. But I cannot believe that the Cincinnati Hogs didn't try to bring in anybody, anything, bring in a mentor, bring in a 32-year-old mentor to help him develop quicker, bring in a guy that if he gets hurt, because clearly we've seen a lot of injuries this year, bring in a guy that if Ronnie Shanahan gets hurt, at least you have someone that can steer the ship. And nothing. Crickets. And again, this all goes back to how difficult it is to manage and GM so many teams. And I know Smitty would never admit this, and that's fine. I don't need him to. In hindsight, he would have fired himself. And if he doesn't agree with that, well, then the Hogs are losers of 6 of their last 7, probably not going to make the playoffs. And the number 2 biggest, I have no idea what is going on right now, boneheaded move that I've ever seen. And that was it. I teased it earlier, right? The Armadillos switching playbooks and changing their whole entire offense to go against a team that sucked and hadn't won a game all year made no sense to me whatsoever. Like if I had an award for dumbest decision of the year, I think, and maybe I'll put this poll question out there. Which of these decisions was worse? The Cincinnati Hogs not acquiring some level of quarterback to help Ronnie Shanahan at the trade deadline, or the Austin Armadillos switching their playbooks to go against a team that hadn't won a game all year and then losing because they did it. I mean, all right. We'll just agree to disagree. I don't know how you can make that statement. I get, yeah, I gave him a shot to be the guy, 100%, and it's admirable. Give the guy a shot. No other quarterback available would have offered much of a difference. That's literally, I think, a lie. I mean, they've won 1 game, right? Like if any quarterback off the scrap heap had won 2 games, well, that's a difference. And now we look at it, and if the Hogs had won 1 of those last 7 games, if they had won 2 out of 7 instead of 1 out of 7, they're probably in. Agreed. I'm not arguing this. I'm not arguing this statement at all. This is an accurate statement. But just in making that statement, it's okay, this quarterback's development is more important than our chance of winning. And Ronnie Shanahan loves that. But I think the rest of the guys on that team are like, man, what if we had what if we'd gone 3-4 in our last 7 instead of 1-6? We'd be in the playoffs. Right? Like, I mean, all right. This is the last one. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go back and forth on this all night. But anyone, Smitty, anyone, like I would have given you Jerry Mayo for a bag of Skittles, and you probably could have gone 1-6 in the last 7 games. Literally anyone, and he's not a fit for how the offense ran. The offense was garbage. He's not a fit for how the offense ran, even when the team was 6-0. It was like the worst offense in the league. So if you're not going to change how the offense ran, I would say the offense didn't run. I would say the offense was on empty. Maybe you needed to fill up the tank. All right. We're having some fun. Yeah, I think at the end of the year, we're going to look at the Cincinnati Hogs and we're going to say that's a team that should have made the playoffs. And maybe they still will. They still have a chance, I believe. I think they're 2 games back of the division, but I don't think they're mathematically eliminated. I just think it's a shame. I think there's something. And, well, again, we don't always agree, right? And we don't always agree. We can agree to disagree. Smitty will die on his hill. He always does. He'll sit here and go back and forth with me for an hour and a half, telling me I don't watch the game. But yeah, I mean, inevitably there's some disappointments. I feel like I put the Hogs on that list of ARC disappointments only because the way the season started, and maybe that's not fair to them. Right? Like, it's not fair to put them on there and call them a disappointment based on the fact that they were so good and then they fell off a cliff. But yet, having left off other teams that started the year really poorly, but maybe now are playing better. All right, let's see what else we got here. A couple other things. Oh, I forgot about this. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity because I know some of you have been asking about awards, Rookie of the Year, things like that. So I'm going to take some time here and kind of go over these with you. I went ahead and pulled some so that you can see these. I'm not going to deep dive too far into it, but I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to see. So, real quick, we're just going to run through. I'm going to start with offense and defensive Rookie of the Year. So, as of right now, the voting for offensive Rookie of the Year in the ARC looks like this. And again, I can sit here and I can say all I want about the Hogs and how, if it were me, I would have done things differently. That's fine. But at the end of the day, to Smitty's point, yeah, the development helped. And Ronnie Shanahan has a chance to win Rookie of the Year. And with winning Rookie of the Year comes a lot of merit, comes a lot of accolades. So it's just unfortunate if he wins Rookie of the Year and they aren't also able to somehow still get into the playoffs. That would be the ultimate, kind of the ultimate gut punch there. But you see here, Kentaro Sheffield, Ronnie Shanahan, Michael Simmons, and then 2 guys on my team, Steve Washington and Ajon Grant. Obviously, Ajon Grant was number 1 on this list when he got hurt. So you can see the impact that injuries can have. Michael Simmons also missed time, but Michael Simmons missed time early on in the year. So Ajon Grant missing those 4 games, like right in the middle of the season, right when he was kind of finding his stride and was inserted into the starting lineup. That really hurt. And then you've got some other guys there kind of rounding out. This really looks probably like a two-man race at this point. With only 3 games left, I would be surprised if the winner wasn't Kentaro Sheffield or Ronnie Shanahan. I think ultimately it is going to be determined by what the Hogs look like the last 3 games. If the Hogs turn around and win their remaining 3 games and they find a way to get into the playoffs, I would not be surprised if Ronnie Shanahan makes that jump over Kentaro Sheffield. When you look at the defensive rookie of the year, this one for me is a little bit more of a runaway. And although I say runaway, Miles Brock has been an absolute godsend for the San Antonio Dreadnoughts. I can't overlook what Austin Sanders has meant to that Chicago Cougars team. And so for my money, it's Austin Sanders, Miles Brock, great season. And, you can see the rest of the top 10 there, but I really feel like Austin Sanders has this one in the bag. If we go over to the NRC, this is where I guess if I were to go back to where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong, this is where I would say where Dunner was wrong. I didn't have this on my bingo card whatsoever. I didn't. And I'm not afraid to admit it, right? Like I say this. You have to be able to say things that you believe, and ultimately you might be proven wrong. Never once did I feel like Jordan Granger was going to be this player this quickly. I'll be honest, I don't know if I really ever thought he was going to be this player. So the fact that he is, and the fact that he is this quickly, is a credit to him. That said, I will also throw this out there. This is a very weak offensive rookie group in the NRC. So the idea that a quarterback is there winning the award isn't surprising, especially when I look at the rest of the class. I like most of those names on that top 10 are okay. But I think really there's not a lot of argument that can be made for anybody outside of Jordan Granger. And I would make an argument that if you were in the ARC, that Tevin Corbett would probably be like 4th or 5th on that list, right? So I think this is Granger's in a landslide. I don't think it's not up for debate at this point. You could make an argument that Granger's been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NRC. Forget the fact that he's doing it as a rookie. So, offensive rookie of the year in the NRC, it's 100% going to go to Jordan Granger. And whether he's aware of it or not, there are big time accolades that come with that. So, shout out to everything that I may have said and criticized Jordan Granger for. It's all out the window and it's all gone now, because winning rookie of the year is going to give him a huge amount of XP. It's going to do wonders for his development. So, all of that slow development, low overall, working his way up, maybe being a backup, all those things that I sort of hinted at and suggested might happen during the preseason and week 1, it's all gone. It's all out the window. Yeah, somebody's saying Jordan Granger is an 81 right now. This top, when we start the season next year, Jordan Granger will probably be an 84, because winning rookie of the year, I'd have to pull it up, but winning rookie of the year, he's probably going to get 15 or 20,000 XP, maybe not quite that high. Maybe like 10,000 XP, which is probably good enough for 1, maybe 2 more upgrades. And so if he's an 81 overall, realistically, you're looking at minimum he's an 83 overall when the season ends. Right. So shout out to Jordan Granger. The Louisville Lumberjacks are overachieving this year. I think you can make an argument that they're one of, if not the biggest surprise so far this year. And then when we go over to defensive rookie of the year in the NRC, Elijah Walker here for the Snowhawks. At the beginning of the year, I mentioned Brock Frederick as a candidate for the Shamrocks, and you can see he's right there behind Elijah Walker. And then you've actually got 2 Snowhawks on this list and 2 Shamrocks on this list. So some good production from the rookies, both in Portland and in Boston. So that's a look at the offensive and defensive rookie of the year for both the ARC and the NRC. Again, still have 3 games left, but that's where we look right now. Now, if we go over to individual position awards, so we're going to go ARC. So ARC best quarterback right now is Keno Gannon. I don't really think this is much of a surprise. He's kind of been that guy all year long. And then you can see the other guys that round out the top 10. If you go to, we're going to go through all of the ARC here. So we're going to go the entire ARC position by position, and then we're going to go to the NRC after. So ARC best quarterback, it looks like it's Keno Gannon. I don't imagine that changing between now and then, but maybe it could. When you go to the running back position, listen, where Dunner was right. I said this at the beginning of the year. Matt Wheaton is the best running back in the ARC. I think I may have even said I thought he was the best running back in the entire RFL. I don't know how you game plan for this guy. I personally, the Miners have gone against the Bulldogs in my tenure, I want to say 3 or 4 times, and he just absolutely destroys every time. I don't know how to stop him. Every time I think I'm doing the right thing, it backfires. So shout out to Matt Wheaton. Maybe there's a chance Kingston Kenny can get there. I hate the fact that Levi Dixon is on this list that high because all of it is pass catching. And I get it. That's part of the game, but you're not going to tell me that Levi Dixon is the 3rd best running back in the ARC. And if you are going to tell me that, I'm just not going to buy it. I think there's 2 or 3 running backs. There's probably 5 running backs in the ARC that I would rather have above Levi Dixon. As a matter of fact, I think I probably have 2 running backs on my own team that I'd rather have above Levi Dixon. It works for the Armadillos, and that's why he's 3rd right now on the list. Because he's got, I believe, almost 800 yards receiving. Like Levi Dixon there's a good possibility Levi Dixon has 1,000 yards receiving at the running back position. And I don't know how many times that's been done. Smitty, maybe that's something that you know. I don't know if I've seen it very often in the 4 years that I've been here. But he's close to 1,000 yards receiving at the running back position. And that's why Levi Dixon is 3rd on that list. When we go to wide receiver, this is a no-brainer. I mean, Jordy Johnson has been the best receiver in the league all year long. He pretty much stamped his name on the league in week 1. He stamped his name on this award in week 1. I cannot envision a scenario where he doesn't win this award. With the way that the Armadillos have performed this year, the way that their offense is rolling, aside from, again, the biggest boneheaded decision I've ever seen in my life, this team just offensively is a powerhouse. So Jordy Johnson, in my opinion, running away with best wide receiver. If you go to defensive line, I skipped over offensive line guys only because, one, there aren't really, you guys probably don't care that much about the offensive line, but also history has shown that the voting and the award for best offensive lineman doesn't really like the algorithm is off, right? Like last year, I had one of my backup offensive linemen finished third or fourth in the voting for best offensive lineman in the league. So it really just doesn't carry much weight. I don't think the algorithm works. But if we go right to defensive line, again, another Austin Armadillo guy here. And this was one that was acquired at the trade deadline, right? Like, so talk about the Armadillos and the high powered offense, but they made moves at the trade deadline to solidify the defense as well. And Isaiah Ingram right now is the leader in the clubhouse for best defensive lineman in the ARC. If you go to linebacker, it's nice to see my boy Killian Bain there in the 4 spot. He's closing in on 20 sacks this year. I believe he's third or fourth in the league in sacks. Pretty tight knit group there. I believe it's like 18 and a half or 18. And then there's like 3 guys that are between 17 and a half and 16 and a half. So tight knit group up there. But Nolan Angulo right now, best linebacker in the ARC. And you can see the list there. Some really, really good linebackers on that list. Like the idea that David Leathers is 10th. You know, I don't have to tell you guys how good David Leathers is and how I feel about David Leathers. The idea that he is 10th on this list just goes to show you how good some of the linebackers are in the ARC. We go to DBs. This is probably the lone bright spot for the Chicago Cougars this year, right? Keani Jones looking like he might take home best DB award in a year that the Cougars would love to soon forget. Keani Jones has been a bright spot for them. And then we go to the NRC. We look at the NRC. Interesting to see that the 2 quarterbacks that are leading their respective conference in the award for best quarterback are the 2 quarterbacks that signed long-term lucrative deals with teams other than the ones that drafted them, right? So if you remember, Marquise Washington was a member of the Aviators. Geno Gannon was a member of the Cougars. And now we have those 2 leading their conference in best player at their position, best overall quarterback. And then there's Jordan Granger. Look, I mean, I said this earlier. It's a landslide that he's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. But the idea that he could also win best quarterback is almost unconscionable. Right? So shout out to Jordan Granger and the entire Lumberjacks squad for how they've performed this year. Moving on to best running back, Tavion Hall, not really a surprise. This guy's up there every single year. You know, over the last 3 or 4 years, he was arguably the reason why the Desperados were even good. There was a couple years where the Desperados won double-digit games. I think they won the division a couple years ago, and they were looked at as a team that could make the Relo Bowl. And it was all because of Tavion Hall, sorry. He's just an absolute monster. So no surprise to see him up there. And then you get a look at the rest of the running back crop there in the NRC. We go to wide receiver, DeAndre Kayon. I mean, again, you could say this is kind of a lone bright spot for the Baltimore Gunners here. You got Robert Woods, you got Kara Chiguer, you got Kincaid, Romeo Jackson, CJ Robinson. Like, I think it's probably a surprise to see a guy like CJ Robinson so low on this list. It just goes to show you how, you know, how much volatility there is year over year. And then also, you know, losing some numbers to his own teammate there in Caleb Houston, who you see there at number 8. Going over to defensive line. Cole Bacon has had an amazing year for the Crusaders, and Kevin Kudon also for the Condors. I know I spotlighted him a couple months back. He had a stretch where I think he had 7 sacks over the course of like 3 games. And he was leading the league in sacks. He was just dominating. So no surprise to see Kevin Condon up there, or sorry, Kevin Kudon up there, and Cole Bacon leading the way right now for the LA Crusaders. And then the Mexico City Diablos, best linebacker right now. You've got Marvin Woolfolk, Daniel Silverio up there. Nice to see him. Do not be surprised if Daniel Silverio's name is listed in that top 5 or top 3 for the next decade. I think he's going to be viewed as one of, if not the best linebackers in the NRC for a long time. Jacob Reed on that list. Many thought perhaps he could be a little bit higher. Maybe a little bit of a down year for him, but shout out to the Diablos and Woolfolk there. Best DB, another member of the Mexico City Diablos. So we've got Sheldon Reinhardt. Again, another trade deadline acquisition here, right? So this was an acquisition. The Diablos made a trade with the Explorers. They want to try to push themselves over the top. They go out and they get Sheldon Reinhardt. And right now he's looking like he could take home the award for best DB in the NRC. And then if we go overall ARC offensive player of the year, Jordy Johnson. I mean, you can look at the names on this list. I'm not surprised here. As much as I love Matt Wheaton, I don't think that you can make an argument against Jordy Johnson. And I agree that Jordy Johnson is the more, I don't know how to phrase this. I guess the more valuable offensive player over Geno Gannon, right? Like, I know many of you are going to say, well, why is Geno Gannon 4? Like, if he's the MVP or if he's the best quarterback, usually quarterbacks, get more love. Geno Gannon's probably going to win the MVP. Why isn't he first? Like, I don't have a problem with this at all. What Jordy Johnson has done this year is incredible. And then if we go over to the defensive side of the ball, Nolan Angulo, he was number 1 best best overall linebacker in the ARC. And he is the top spot for defensive player of the year right now. Again, still 3 weeks to go. Shout out to my guy, Killian Bain, on there right now, 6th on that list. And if we move over to the NRC, you'll see DeAndre Cayon. So that's a big one there. But I think the bigger thing, again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I just can't give enough praise to Jordan Granger. And the fact that he's been able to do what he's done with a team that no one really expected to be where they are. It's not like Jordan Granger was thrust into a situation where he took over a powerhouse team and he's just kind of been a game manager and let his team win games around him. Like, Jordan Granger is winning games for this team, and the Lumberjacks are winning the division this year. And a lot of that is because of Jordan Granger. And to be able to say that about a rookie is not, that's not a small accomplishment, right? Like, Jordan Granger is doing what Ronnie Shanahan wished he could have been doing over the last 7 games. So offensive player of the year right now, the Gunners, DeAndre Cayon, we got Robert Woods, Jordan Granger, Tom Wilson, Marquise Washington round out the top 5. And then if we go to defensive player of the year, There's your boy Marvin Woolfolk. I know Forbes is going to be happy with that one. And then you've got Cole Bacon, Kevin Kudon, rounding out the top three there. Worth mentioning, for as disappointing a season as it may have been for the Baltimore Gunners, to see Statton there fourth in Defensive Player of the Year, and then Keon first in Offensive Player of the Year, you can't say that they haven't had some production, right? So I guess early prediction, I would look at the Baltimore Gunners and what they do during the offseason, because I could identify the Gunners as a potential team to surprise next year, to turn things around next year. When you've got guys like that performing at that level, a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and that team could turn things around next year. And I know Tyon would love it. Tyon would love it. All right, so that's a look. I know you guys are always asking about awards, Rookie of the Year. So hopefully you guys appreciate that. That gives you an idea of where things stand. And then before I get you out of here, the last thing I want to do is I want to go over the playoff scenarios, right? So the playoff scenarios as we enter week 16, here we go. So there are 7 clinching scenarios in the NRC, and there's only 2 clinching scenarios in the ARC. So the Desperados can clinch the division with a win and a Diablos loss. The Diablos can clinch a playoff spot with a win. So all the Diablos have to do is win this week, and they're in. The Portland Snowhawks, they can clinch the division if they win and the Condors lose. The San Jose Condors can clinch a playoff spot with a win or a loss by Memphis, Atlanta, and DC. So the Condors can still spot if they lose, but Memphis, Atlanta, and DC would all have to lose. And then the same thing holds with the Lumberjacks. The Lumberjacks clinch a playoff berth with a win and a loss from Memphis, Atlanta, and DC. The Explorers are in as long as they win and the Steamers lose. The Shamrocks in the NRC East can clinch the division. Oh, I screwed that one up. Because clearly they're not clinching the division with a win and a Shamrocks loss. So apologies for that. That's a typo on the graphic there. I can pull it up right here. See what we got. Give you guys a little bit more clarity on this, because that is a typo in the bottom left. That is a typo on the Shamrocks. So the let's see. The Shamrocks can clinch the NRC East with a win and a Steamers loss. Sorry, I wrote Shamrocks. I meant to write Steamers. So the Boston Shamrocks will clinch the East if they win and the Steamers lose. A Steamers loss this week really kind of solidifies the playoff picture a little bit heading into week 17, right? If the Steamers lose, the Explorers win, they're in. The Steamers lose, the Shamrocks win, they're in. And it also goes a long way for helping the Lumberjacks, the Condors, and their efforts to get in as well. And then on the ARC side of things, the Armadillos, listen, we all know the Armadillos are in. I think even if they were to lose the final 3 games, they're probably still in. Mathematically, they haven't clinched, but they can clinch the division with a win or a Dreadnoughts loss. They can also, there's a scenario where they could clinch the number 1 overall seed this week, but there's a lot that goes into that, and I'm not really going to get into that right now. But the biggest thing here is the Austin Armadillos can clinch the ARC South if they win or the Dreadnoughts lose. So not and, or. So there's a pretty good chance that the Austin Armadillos will be popping champagne later on this week, because all they have to do is win or watch the Dreadnoughts lose, and they'll be popping bottles as they head to the playoffs. And then the last remaining playoff clinching scenario that we have here is the Pittsburgh Pioneers. So the Pittsburgh Pioneers can clinch the ARC North with a win and a loss by the Cincinnati Hogs and the Toronto Huskies. So if the Huskies and the Hogs lose, the Pioneers will win the ARC North. All right, so there's a look at the playoff scenarios as we head into week 16. I will share this out. I will post this out on the Miners Twitter, and I'll post this out on Miners Twitter, so that way you guys have a chance to see it. I will also post this in the RFL general chat. That way you guys can see it there as well if you want to follow along this week. But there's a quick look at the playoff clinching scenarios. I didn't go into any of the scenarios where teams could be eliminated because, quite honestly, I don't really care. There's a lot of teams that could be eliminated, and it's just not really worth thinking about that. Chances are, if you could be eliminated this week, well, you could probably also be eliminated next week too. So really just focusing on the teams that could clinch a playoff spot and get a playoff berth. And that's what it looks like right now. Again, 7 scenarios in the NRC, only 2 in the ARC. Questions on anything in the chat? I'll go out real quick. Yeah, so Smitty, if you're wondering what some of those matchups are, the Hogs have the Dreadnoughts. So if the Dreadnoughts lose, that puts the Armadillos in no matter what. If the Hogs lose, and the Huskies lose, all the Pioneers have to do is win, and they clinch the division. The Huskies are facing the Desperados, so that could be a difficult one. And the Hogs are obviously facing the Dreadnoughts, so that's a difficult one. So if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Pioneers, I think you are optimistic about your chances of clinching the division this week. And certainly, if not this week, then next week. Because I think that the Dreadnoughts could beat the Hogs, and I think that the Desperados could beat the Huskies. And then if that happens, all you have to do is beat the Black Knights, and you win the division. So great opportunity for the Pioneers to win that ARC North. And again, that's a full look at the playoff clinching scenarios around the league as we head into week 16. So last chance here, guys. I'll probably get out of here in a minute. If anybody has any comments or questions, anything that you want to talk about or you want me to address, feel free. I'll probably give you guys open forum here for about a minute or two. If I don't see anything from you guys, then I'll just get out of here. I still got to go prep. Smitty, since I have you here, 9 o'clock, what time are we going? What time are the Miners going live? I hope it's 9 o'clock. Okay, Hodge says 9 o'clock. All right, good. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. We've got RFL action tonight. The Sacramento Miners are at home against the Celtic Tigers. A big game, right? If we are able to win, it certainly helps our cause. to get back to the postseason this year. If we do not win, things are getting stressful. I would say things are stressful right now in Sacramento, but a loss tonight drops us to 8-7, and at that point, the last two games are must win, because even at 10-7, I don't think we're guaranteed in. So we have the Celtic Tigers tonight, then we have the Bisons next week, and then we have the Brooklyn Bulls the last week of the season. So tonight's game will go a long way. I think if we can get the win against the Celtic Tigers, that will be a big win against a team that is also fighting for a playoff spot. I believe they are 9-6. So if we beat them, we will both be 9-7. At that point, we would then have the tiebreak over them, which would be huge as we head into the last 2 weeks of the year. And then going into next week, the game against the Bisons, I'm optimistic that we could win that game. But again, winning that game next week doesn't mean anything unless we can get the win tonight, because winning that game next week is mandatory if we don't get the win tonight. So absolute burner tonight in Sacramento. The Celtic Tigers are making the long trip all the way from Dublin to face the Miners. So be sure to tune in. That game will kick off at 9:00 tonight. Until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in. Again, I appreciate being here with you guys. Glad to be back. We've got 3 weeks left of the regular season. Then we get into the postseason. So I'll try to be with you here the next 3 weeks, take you right into the postseason. Until next time, I am your host and general manager of the Sacramento Miners, Mr. Chris Dunn. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the games tonight and take care, everybody.